everybody. I'm Ashley, and I'm here with Pastor Joel and Pastor Jonathan, the hosts of my favorite podcast, What the Flock. Hi, guys. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you for having us, Ashley.
Your
Hey,
favorite podcast?
yeah, the only podcast that I listen to.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you guys sitting down with me today. We're going to chat about an episode from your new season, season 6, which you just finished up. And the season is a new format. So you're really looking to help repair the reputation of the Bible, which has been really interesting to follow along all the different concepts that you kind of take us through. But the concept we're going to talk about today is actually divorce. And this was a doozy of an episode. Not only was it a long episode and you really went through like 3 different chunks of scripture, but also just so much content and so much meat. So one of the things I was thinking about as I listened to this episode is how it seems like just about everybody is touched by divorce. Either we have a parent that has been divorced, a sibling, a best friend, maybe we've been divorced a time or two. And so I think this is a concept that everybody has been affected by in some way. And so I love this episode because I believe it can bring healing and repair to so many people. And I believe that marriage is something that's really close to God's heart. And I imagine he is just incredibly grieved at how the church has just slaughtered these concepts of marriage and divorce. So thank you. As I listened to the episode, and I did listen to it a couple times because there's so much in it, I feel like I experienced repair and I experienced some healing just in some of the things that I was wrong about. I had wrong thoughts and ideas about what divorce is. So thank you. And before we go further, I just want to give a tiny bit of background. I hope that everybody goes to listen to the episode, but if they don't, it's important for our conversation today that they understand something. One of the things that you mentioned is that the church is just hammered with this idea that divorce is a sin and God hates divorce. But this episode clearly showed us that putting away and divorce are 2 separate concepts. Like, what? I don't think I even knew what putting away was. I grew up in a church. I had never heard that term before. And then to realize that it's not the same as divorce. They're 2 different things. So, I want to kind of talk about how you guys learned this because Pastor Joel, you mentioned in the episode, you're working on getting your doctorate in theology, right? And this is not something they're teaching you. So how did you guys learn this? I'm imagining, I could be wrong, but maybe you had like something going on in your life that led you to learn this. Or as you learned this, I'm thinking you had to change some things or adjust some things in your life. So how did you learn this? And then how did it affect you once you learned like this life-shattering information?
Yeah, the church that Jonathan and I are now a part of, started out as a home church. Really, even at the beginning, our origin story, we weren't intentionally gathering as a church. That's just what we refer to it now because that's what it turned into. But a big part of what we were doing is it was a group of people who had been hurt by church, who wanted to make sense of who God is and what our part in that was. So like what salvation is and how we can intentionally hear from him better. And on that journey, you start understanding who God is. You understand what your part, how you interact with it, what your part in that is, how you interact with God, how you continually grow and who he created you to be. And then it's kind of like the next step in this journey of understanding him more and being more intentional in my walk with him. And our walk with him was, what's God's will and what's the meaning of life? It's not enough to just say who is God and what is salvation. It's why are we here? What for? And on that journey, you end up finding out, and this goes back to season 5 even, where we cover God's will in depth.
Mhm.
We end up discovering that, at the big picture level, you could say the meaning of life is church and marriage. That is the most simple way of describing what God's ultimate goal is this community of people that's married to his son that he can fellowship with forever. And it's the simplest way to describe the method in which God accomplishes that goal. He works through the church, and he works through marriages. And so that was kind of the journey. That's kind of how we got there. And then I would say the specific understanding behind putting away and divorce came from this group of us embracing these 5 interpretation tools and really making sure we didn't just take what the Bible said at face value, but we did the research we needed to do in determining what the original languages said. And I'll tell you, once you get to that, even that second step, and you start realizing, wait a minute, there's 2 different words that are being used that are translated wrongly, or in a most of the time it's being translated inappropriately. And so that's kind of what started this journey. And then, you just keep doing more research. You start understanding why the church has embraced this doctrine. And so that's kind of the progression of how we went and why we got to this place of really digging into what marriage was. It was a lot less about figuring out what divorce is than it was about really understanding marriage, right? And because the doctrine of divorce, the doctrine of putting away, if you don't understand marriage in the first place,
Nice.
it really doesn't matter. Like, I don't need to know about divorce and putting away, unless it's in relation to marriage. That's really the goal. It's like, we want to understand what marriage is, because it not only has major impact on everybody's lives, just as we live here today, but eternal consequences as the church will be married to Christ. So that's kind of the progression there. And I guess how it changed my life, I would say very similar to what it sounds like your experience was, Ashley, where it's just, I had never heard of putting away before. It's still, to me, like, sounds weird in my head, even when I hear it, of like it is, I know it is this concept, but it's so misapplied or not applied at all in the church today, at least in the way God would have intended us to, that it still seems in part like this foreign concept that we just don't use. So it was kind of like this doctrinal shock, like a culture shock of doctrine, like a doctrinal shock, right? Of like, wow, just kind of eye-opening as to how, not only how little I understand about the Bible and the doctrine of the Bible, but also just how much the church has been just gone a completely different way, at least as it relates to the topic of marriage and divorce. So yeah, it was just like, it was really eye-opening and kind of shocking for me.
Such a good answer, Joel. Yeah, we have been on this crazy journey, and I think with marriage and divorce and putting away, it's all been a journey of what does the Bible actually say, and using those interpretation steps, just like Joel said. And we've done that with a lot of things. And I think the biggest impact are when it comes to the meaning of life. Again, what Joel said, church and marriage. So I think for me, how it affected me learning that is, all of a sudden, when you learn about truly, removing yourself from the tradition of the church and looking actually at what the Bible says and what the truth is, you're going to find out that God got divorced.
Yeah.
Like, to Joel's point, talk about like a culture shock.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go from there? God sinned. God did something wrong. God did something unfair. And all of a sudden it completely changes your worldview. Because God got divorced from Israel. And it was completely Israel's fault and Israel's choice. But, and obviously divorce is not the goal.
Right.
But I think God understands humans way better than humans understand humans. And so to say to someone, God does not put that standard on anybody. You chose to be with someone, and now you need to freaking buckle down and be with them forever. God does not do that. God never said that. Because I think the church waved this flag for years of the divorce rate outside the church is so much higher than inside the church. And they started to measure everything based upon the statistics of how long people stayed married for. Oh, let's not like focus at all about what was going on in those marriages. Let's just focus on the fact that people stayed together. And that's what the church became really proud in. So what happens? Pride comes before the fall, and now the divorce rate is higher in the church than outside the church. Congratulations, everybody. Great strategy. Because God never said that. God gave a way for people to be divorced because God understands humans. So honestly, Ashley, when Joel and I learned this and people started to come to us for help in their marriage, we didn't focus on divorce or not divorce. It was always the same strategy. Do you want to be with this person or not? And then if they would say, I want to be with them, we'd say, great, love them. Absolutely love them.
Yeah.
Love them. Give your life for them. Invest into this marriage. Do everything that you possibly can. Yes, Joel.
But I don't. But I don't want to be with them. No, that's too much work. What would I do if I don't want to be with them, Jonathan?
Okay, Joel.
Give me the easy way out, please.
Okay. Now, let's say Joel's coming to me doing that, just saying, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be with this person. I'm tired of being with this person. Then what we would say is, love them.
Yeah.
God will sort this out if you choose to love someone. If you choose that you don't want to be with someone, then I think a lot of people go, I'm quitting, I'm failing. Divorce is hard. Divorce sucks. I don't want to see people divorced. I think God wanted to be divorced from it. Clearly, God did not, that's a fact, did not want to and start off going, I want to be divorced. No, God wants to hang out with us for all of eternity. He wanted to be with Israel. But by God loving the people, it proved out that the only way that he would be able to be married to them is if he did something wrong. If it was enabling, and then that love would have turned into enabling. And it would have been God's fault that Israel did what they did. And so that's why we give people the advice. Are you doing absolutely everything that you possibly can? Are you listening to God to take direction from him, to love them and literally do everything? What haven't you done? And then people who go through that process, more often than not, if there's one person that we're helping and the other person's like, I don't want to talk to Joel, I don't want to talk to Jonathan, we help the person who we're talking to love that other person, and then the other person is what makes the decision to divorce them.
Yep.
I'm like, God sorts this out. And so we don't see that as a failure. I see divorce through the eyes of God got divorced. Now, the meaning of life is church and marriage. God got divorced. How did he handle it? Now, let's approach the subject.
Wow. So, that makes me think a lot about my own marriage story. My husband and I, we were high school sweethearts, got married, and it was hard. And it was not all it was cracked up to be. And we struggled for a long time. But I think in our story, we were like leaders in our church, and there was just no way that we were going to get a divorce. We saw how divorce was talked about in the church. We saw how people who had been divorced were treated. And we had a reputation to uphold, and we were not going to be those people that were going to be doing this horrible thing, you know? And I look back on it now, and it's like the culture of our church said, don't get divorced, just don't do it. But they couldn't offer anything to help us with our marriage. Like, we were struggling so much. And so I look back on that time in my life, and I see how much we really struggled, and how much like focus we put on appearance. Like, it was all about our appearance. So this is kind of getting off topic from divorce per se, but I feel like this is an issue in the church specifically, is this appearance issue, and how much we let it rule our life, and how many other people are doing the same. You know, like the freedom that I have found in like doing the work, learning how to love my husband, him learning how to love me. Like, we actually like each other now. Like, we love being together. A lot of this damage has been repaired.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to first like let down my guard and be okay with looking bad. So like, my heart breaks when I think about the people who are being held back by this issue of appearance. Maybe it's a spirit of appearance. I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think about this? I'm coming to you as, you know, the pastor experts.
Yeah, I definitely think the church has an influence or a spirit of appearance over it. I would definitely say we've experienced that in our region for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And it's devastating. I get, like, I understand where this starts. It starts from a place often of good intentions, or even just of like, just maybe just being afraid. Like,
Mm.
we all want to feel connected, right? We do. But we're afraid that if we really let our guard down, that we'll be rejected. So we put on a face, a mask that we think other people want to see, because what we really want is just to be loved and to be connected and to be accepted. But the opposite happens. You know, we end up becoming depressed or, you know, anxious of all these different, you know, kind of lies that we're living, and trying to manage how I'm supposed to act when I'm around certain people. And it can just be, you know, completely draining. Now, when that same mentality starts manifesting itself in my spiritual walk as well, and as a leader in the church, now what I'm doing is what the Pharisees did. It's essentially, you know, portraying myself in a certain way. You want Jesus to say about you, do what he says, not what he does.
Mm.
It's like, no, no. I want Jesus to be like, yeah, listen to that guy, because his works prove that he has integrity. The same as Jesus basically said, you know, I don't testify of myself, my works testify of who I am. And it's just so backwards. And the ultimate destruction that can happen out of this is you're enabling other people's destruction. You're enabling people to see out of a leader in the church what they're being shown as an example of what it means to be a Christian, to be someone who loves God, and somebody who's a follower of Christ. And when whatever's depicted is something that is not in line with what it really means to be a Christian, you're enabling people to walk a path where they're deceived. They don't even know what it means to be a Christian. And that, so it all, like, the spirit of appearance, it can sound like, oh, I just want to look a certain way. It can sound kind of like, you know, it's not great. You know, maybe you shouldn't care what you look like. But when we're talking about what we look like, it's not just physical. It's not just like, what clothes am I wearing? Am I have enough makeup on? Am I skinny enough? It's also, what's my behavior like? How are people seeing me act? What's my mental and emotional walk with the Lord like? What's my spiritual walk? What does that look like? And when we're focused on the appearance of our mental, emotional, and spiritual lives, is where we can really be causing, we're putting a stumbling block in the path of other believers. So it can be really, really damaging. But I get where it starts, right? I think it starts in a place of just being afraid of this lie we tell ourselves. If people accept us, we'll be okay. If everybody accepts me, I must be a good person. So yeah, that's my take on it. I think you're right. Like the divorce thing is one aspect. Like I think in one aspect, like if I get divorced, then everybody's going to see me as a failure.
Yep.
So we got to stick together, right? Appearance.
Yep.
But you're right, Ashley, though. It manifests itself in every area of our lives.
Yeah, Joel, I totally agree. I wrote down so I wouldn't forget Pharisees.
Nice. Yeah.
You know, that's the heart of this. Is nothing new. But this
No.
the Pharisaical spirit, or this, the whitewashed tombs,
Oh, yeah.
where it's like the appearance is beautiful, but inside is just full of dead men's bones.
Mhm.
What I'll say, I'll give a different take on this. I think that Joel's absolutely right, but I think what I think will kill this spirit is two things. One is if people admit that they're wrong.
Yeah.
Okay? Because the thing is that, I mean, pastoring at Music of Life Church Appleton, was absolutely incredible. Like I'm a pastor trainer now. I was at Music of Life Church Appleton. Now I'm a pastor trainer now. It's like there's the unveiling to the what the flock people, which they know us anyway. But anyway, preaching was so healing and helpful for me because I try to admit something that I was wrong in every sermon. And what did it cause people? How did it cause people to feel about me? Or how did I appear? Which is really interesting. Strong and trustworthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because if someone comes up to you, Ashley, and they just say, hey, or right in the moment, you're dealing with them, you're having a conversation, and they go, you know what? I was wrong. It's actually this. I don't want to have pizza tonight. I was wrong to say that I wanted to have pizza. I want to have tacos. You go, oh, I don't even trust you at all.
Oh,
How
geez.
dare you?
How
No,
dare,
you
who do
did.
you think you are?
It's
Oh,
you
sir.
just
I mean, come on.
right. So it's just like we. I mean, I do anyway. I see people as strong that can admit when they're wrong. To me, that kills that sense of appearance and actually makes you long term appear right, because that's the quickest way to be right, is to admit that you're wrong. It's the only way to grow, is to be wrong and respond well to it. Now the second thing is, so we gotta admit that we're wrong. So you said, Ashley, like my marriage is broken. I should not have the marriage I have right now. This is not what I signed up for. This is not this is not of God to have a marriage this way. It ought not be that way. So what do? You're wrong. You got to get help, which is the second thing. People need to ask for help. So I think if you are someone who admits that they're wrong, and when you need help, you ask for it, which I know that you and your husband did, Ashley. You guys knew that you were wrong, and then you got the help that you needed, and then bang, there you go. You get the marriage of your dreams. And that's what we want. Like the whole goal is for everybody to be in the marriage that God intended them to be. So if someone wants to stay married or be married or get divorced, this is a process. You learn everything that you can in the relationship that you're in to have a better marriage. The whole goal is a better marriage. The whole goal is to grow, your ability to have a covenant with Jesus, and your marriage is an example of that. So this is all a process. So I would say that in terms of appearance, that's what kills it. Admit that you're wrong and ask for help. And we do have, and for anybody out there who's listening to this, we have tons of resources for you. Joel and I both, not only are we, pastors, not only do we do What the Flock, but we also work in a ministry called the Deeper Why. The Deeper Why Ministries is an organization that helps bridge the gap between, where someone's at and the truth that they need.
Yeah.
So what we do at the Deeper Why is we will take, someone will need help. They want to live their purpose. They want to discover who they are. They have struggles with their marriage, they have struggles with themselves, their thought process, whatever. And the Deeper Why goes, okay, do you want to do this a God way? Do you want to learn about God? Do you want to learn about how he is and who he's made you to be? Or do you not want to talk about God?
Mm-hmm.
Do you not want to do anything with Bible? Do you need Bible or do you not need the Bible? Do you want to talk about God? It needs to be Jesus focused. Great. You don't want to do anything like that. You have too much damage, or that's not what you believe in. That's fine. Because the bottom line is the Deeper Why helps with the principles. Because even if you believe in God or not, you still need to learn how to love your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody would argue whether or not you believe in God or not. Is the currency in a marriage is love.
Yeah.
So the Deeper Why exists to help people, bridge that gap and get the truth that they need to apply to their lives. And regardless if they want Jesus or the Bible or God directly or not, truth is truth. Truth is God's truth. He owns that. That's his mountain. And so we carry things down the mountain to bring to people, and we can show them how it's in the Bible or not. So yeah, if anybody out there is struggling with their marriage,
Yeah,
you're
reach
not
out.
alone. We're here for you.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I do feel like for my husband and I specifically, I mean, we needed other people to come alongside us, and it was really about finding the right people. I mean, we had struggled for 8 years, and there was nobody until we met this community that was like, yeah, we can help. And the help that they provided was actually helpful. It actually helped us. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I feel like there are so many people who, one, like we talked about, are struggling with appearance and maybe don't feel comfortable sharing this with their church or with their best friends. And then I think the other problem is that those people might not know how to help them anyways. And I think that's where people start to feel hopeless. Like, the smartest people in my life can't help me. Well, we're doomed. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's awesome. I love that you shared the steps for killing the spirit. That is something that seems super easy, and 2 steps, admit that you're wrong and get the help. And I think so much of that in getting the help is like, I'm going to have to do something. Like, if I'm going to ask for the help, I'm going to have to do it.
That'd be your 3rd step.
Separate.
Yeah, I think the reaching out for help is like part of the, like, there's within that an implied like a repentance as well, right? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. I love that. I do want to go back to something, Pastor Joel, that you were talking about when you mentioned church and marriage being the meaning of life. That's something that I thought about a lot during this episode. Like, okay, marriage is half the meaning of life. Do you guys believe that it's a coincidence that this is such a messed up concept within the church?
Yeah, no, I think it's very much the 2 areas I think the enemy wants to target is church and marriage. And I think a lot of the issues we see in church are at the principal level, the same issues we see in marriages. And, because really it's a fractal relationship, right? Like marriage, like churches, we one of the ways we describe it is the pastor is married to the church, right? The husbandman of this husbandry. And a marriage is one husband man with just the husbandry is made up of just one woman. So yeah, they're very similar in how they're meant to interact with one another and the purposes for them. But I think it's very much, if the enemy can distract humans from the true purpose of church, the true purpose of marriage, then the enemy's doing a good job of delaying God's will from happening. Now, God's will is going to happen. His plan is going to happen. And the enemy knows that. The enemy's just trying to delay the inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, it's hard to say this for certain, but I look at some of Paul's letters in the New Testament and wow, he was talking about Jesus coming back really soon.
Yeah, what the heck?
I still hear people talking about Jesus coming back really soon. Like, no, now we're in the end times. Paul was just as convinced as the people I hear saying it today.
Yeah.
So I can't say it for certain, but from what I believe, the enemy has done a pretty good job of distracting humanity from what church and marriage are really meant to be and what their purpose is and how to be in a profitable church, in a profitable marriage.
Yeah. So, and the way that marriage and church are supposed to work is marriage serves the church. Marriage is the energy of the church. That's one way that you can look at marriage. So when my marriage with Morgan, my wife, is going great, we have together a never-ending source of energy. God, Morgan, and myself. And we can generate so much energy, the three of us together, that we don't need anybody else to love us. We don't need anything else. God's loving me through Morgan. I'm loving Morgan. God's loving Morgan through me. We together are loving God. Like there's all of these connections with the three of us. So I should be, so this is how marriage ought to be, is I'm so jacked and I have so much energy that I can give to everybody around me. And the first people that benefit are my family or my church. Jesus's definition of family are the people who do the will of God. So who should experience that love first is my family, the people that are doing the will of God, my church family. So that is how, and so what happens is if the church doesn't have energy, so if a church doesn't have energy, you walk into a church, you go visit, and you go,
Kind of stale.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I go, we don't have very good marriages here.
Yeah.
But you walk into a church and they're like, hi, how are you? Can I get you something to drink? Would you like something to eat? And it's like, it's real childlike energy. Yeah, because we got, men and women who are knocking boots with their spouse, loving life. And the guys are walking around singing and dancing. And the women are like, I feel like my thoughts are, I'm living on vacation up here because he's helping me not have so many thoughts. And he's walking around the church going, I feel so good. I got energy to give. I got, energy to spare. So that's what a church should look like. And we should see that. And then instead of that, what happens is people are drained in their marriage. So they go to church and they start taking energy from the other people that they're interacting with. Because they're looking for energy because they're not finding it in their marriage. They go and they start taking it from other people. They start like getting into arguments. They're just what is their intention? They want to feel like they have some energy. So they start taking from someone thinking that I need energy. you have energy. Okay, let me just take that from you. Yeah, you know, like I'm gonna start an argument, or I'm gonna ask you a bunch of questions, or I'm gonna sit there and get attention from you, you know, so that I can get what I want. And then the church all of a sudden drains itself of its own energy. So if marriages get right, they'll give to the church, and no one will be looking to really take anything from anybody. There'll be an excess of energy for everyone to enjoy together. And then what do we do? We go outside the church and start giving it to other people. It's like, we're so freaking backwards. It makes me upset. I could dad rant right now about this. People
we
are
want to go
out
in
of order, right? I want to go evangelize. How's your marriage? I want to go evangelize. How's your church?
I want to bring people in.
You have nothing to offer. You have nothing to offer anybody. Great marriage, great church. Awesome. Start bringing people in. Without those things, shut up.
That's worse, right? Like,
you have nothing to offer the world.
It's making reputation worse.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question then. What about, like, I have friends who are single. What about people who are single and they're not married?
Practice.
What about them, Ashley?
I don't know.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, Jonathan nailed it. You practice, right? And this is why it's so important to understand what marriage is. Marriage isn't the contract I signed at the courthouse where we're legally bound to one another.
You're handcuffed,
right,
to a human.
So we know there's 5 levels of intimacy, right? There's interaction. It's just a what, right? Hey, Ashley, like, careful, your coffee cup's going to fall over. That's interaction. Connection is we find something we have common ground in, right?
Coffee.
Like, hey, coffee. Yeah, I like coffee too. Oh, you have kids. I have a kid. You know, we're both parents. Relationship. We start sharing in every area of our lives at a superficial level. We're talking about our weekends together. A lot of times, you know, this is relatives or coworkers. Hey, how about the Packers? That stuff. Fellowship. You share everything you have, do, and are with this person, with one exception: sexual intercourse.
Just one exception.
One exception. So what's the 5th level then? Marriage. You share everything you have, do, and are with that person, with no exceptions. So single people can be marriage experts before they ever get married, because that sexual intercourse is just an effect anyways. It's how you strike the covenant. It's how you consummate the marriage. And it ought to be seen as, yeah, I mean, it can be a measure of a marriage that does have an excess of energy, but it is an effect. So even the cause of marriage ought to be seen as sharing everything you have, do, and are with one another. The same cause of fellowship. So, and this is where a bigger point, like one of my biggest pieces of advice to people who are single, who are wanting to get married, is really 2 things. One, take a reflection on the relationship you have with that person you want to marry right now. Because getting married to that person isn't going to change how you relate. Getting married isn't going to make things better. How you are right now is how you will be once you get married. Likely you'll be worse because you probably have expectations on each other. So with that said, my number 1 piece of advice is get marriage counseling or marriage training before you get married. So this marriage training Jonathan was talking about, that the Deeper Why has, we can help anybody with it. We have been successful bringing people who've been married for years through it. And we've also been successful bringing people through it who aren't even married yet. Let's go through this before we get married. Now, if you don't want to go through our marriage training, another thing I would give advice to anybody is go and find a marriage counselor. Like, why are why are husbands and wives waiting until their marriage is on its last leg about to fall apart before
Love
they
that.
get help?
Love that.
Get marriage counseling before you go. Talk to a psychologist. Go to counseling at your church, somebody, before you get married. And I know there's a lot of churches, actually, the Catholic Church is really good at this. They have like rigorous programs that they put people through before they'll agree to marry them. I think it's great. And I think hopefully we can find the people and the resources that will help us have a really great marriage. But I think if we're waiting to get counseling or waiting to get help in our marriage, if we're waiting until our marriage is about to end, that's half the issue, is we haven't been getting help in our marriage until things got bad. So rant
Yes. And I love, and no, I want to rant back.
Yes.
Maybe not rant, but the greatest, I would say the greatest biblical examples that we get about what to follow and how to be in a marriage are from a guy who was single.
Mm.
His name's Apostle Paul.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh man. And
Yep.
we all go, oh, Apostle Paul was great. Awesome. So when Joel, who's single, gives advice to a married couple and they say, well, you're not married, you can't understand. They should probably take those pages in the Bible that Apostle Paul wrote, and they should probably just rip those out and just not apply that to their marriage because he was single too. Unless all of what our fellowship or our soon-to-be marriage with Jesus translates and can be converted into how we are supposed to be married with other people. So to
That's
Joel's
good.
point, you want to practice being married? Start this way.
Yeah. With God, with Jesus.
The Holy Spirit
yeah.
is going to be closer to you than your spouse will be.
Mm.
So you can practice with that level of intimacy.
Mm.
And there are no shortage of opportunities.
No, I mean,
Also,
you can practice with your friends. I mean, it's like this type of intimacy it transcends gender too.
Yeah.
I think all too often, one of the ways we make sex a cause is it gets in the way of how we interact with people. We can't stop thinking, I want to have sex with this person. You're making it a cause. It's like, just learn how to interact with these people at a mental, emotional, and spiritual level. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice I've heard Jonathan give. He's given it to me, and I've heard him give it to others. It's like, whenever you want to put your hands on a person, try to say what you want to do through your hands with words. Can you express what you want that experience to be like with words? And what it does is it forces you to be able to actually express mentally and emotionally what you want that person to experience. Instead of, because likely what it's going to be is maybe that was for my benefit. You know what the words are? The words are, I want to touch you. It's like, maybe you should back up and see, again, back to Jonathan's point earlier in the interview, love. Love is the currency of marriage. Love is the currency of fellowship too.
Totally.
It is.
Wow. Well, thank you. I mean, I feel like I end every episode this way, but I feel like every time we talk, I feel so cared for. Like, we talk about all these things that God provides for us, like all these ways that he's looking to connect with us, all these things that we've learned that can help us grow into who he wants us to be. And I just feel so grateful and so cared for. And so I want to end on one of the quotes from the episode. And the quote is that divorce is a solution that God gave us in his law, showing how much he knows us, that we're going to need a way to deal with making a poor decision. And for me, that was so healing for me as someone whose parents were divorced. And hearing that in the episode and sharing it now, like I feel so cared for. And I just think Like, thank you for giving us this way. And it's okay to be wrong. And it's how we handle being wrong that really matters. So this has been a great episode. I took a lot of notes. So thank you, as always, for just sharing your wisdom and taking the time to help people and be available to people, even if they've never talked to you before. You're there and you're willing to help. So thank you. Thank you for this season and all the work that you've done to help so many of us find healing and repair. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Can't wait for more.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley. This was great.
Bye, guys.